All right, folks, this is Harris Sultan. With the exception of the United States, it seems like the entire Western world is lost. Nobody seems to know what the West stands for anymore. Values that should have been crystal clear suddenly seem blurry. Your sense of identity, culture, history, everything seems embarrassing to Westerners. I have often said that this is the greatest civilization humanity has ever come up with, okay? Ever, period. This is the only civilization that took us to the moon, gave us medical advancements, cars, rockets, the internet, now AI. But it seems embarrassed of itself. It seems embarrassed of its own history and culture and its values, the very values that made it the greatest civilization. Why is it? Is it an accident? I don't know. I think future historians will have a better idea. But while we're living in it, I can tell that it is not an accident. There is an infiltration of ideas that are antithetical to Western civilization or Western values. I was watching this amazing debate of our very own Nuriyah Khan and an Australian academic, theologian, versus a Muslim academic from London. It was a Palestinian Muslim academic, but based in London. And they were talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, how the Brotherhood has infiltrated the UK in the shape of MEND and other Islamist organizations that are not overtly violent. They're actually not violent. That's the genius of the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood does not behave like ISIS or Al Qaeda or Osama bin Laden. They don't go out, start massacring people. They are working on this intergenerational project where they will slowly infiltrate Western institutions, weaken them from within, spread their ideology, spread their propaganda, and then hopefully, after some decades, after some generations, these amazing Western institutions will lose confidence in themselves. And that's exactly what we're starting to see. For example, this term Islamophobia was propagated by the Muslim Brotherhood. They firmly believe, it's in their agenda, that the Quran is our constitution and Muhammad is our leader. And they want to spread Islamic values or establish Islamic caliphate all over the world, not by violent means, but through dawah, through propagation of its ideas. And we have CARE in the United States. That's why Trump has recently banned the Muslim Brotherhood, but not entirely, just the Egyptian chapter. He hasn't banned the Qatari chapter. I wonder why that is. Is that because Qatar was very generous in giving gifts to President Trump? Now, I know I do like President Trump on so many issues, but I don't like some of his habits. For example, he's very prone to falling victim to flattery, for example. It's quite obvious. If you're going to ban the Muslim Brotherhood, you should ban the Muslim Brotherhood in its entirety, not just the Egyptian chapter. The Qatari chapter is probably more dangerous than the Egyptian chapter. So what do? How do they operate? They go into our schools and colleges and universities, and then they propagate their ideology. This is no accident that within a generation, suddenly, not just Muslim children or Muslim students, but Western children, Christian children, or atheist children have suddenly found a soft spot for organizations like Hamas. Hamas that throws homosexuals off rooftops. Hamas that doesn't tolerate any non-Muslim in its territory. They make Christians live like second-class citizens. The way they treat women. Why do these Western wokes admire Hamas? Why do they do that? It's no accident. It's because of the infiltration of the Brotherhood and their ideology. It's as simple as that. Democracies like Israel are hated in the West now, but Hamas and Hezbollah, they're admired. Ask yourself, why is that happening? It's not an accident. It's because our judges, our professors are getting training on Islamophobia by people who are trained by the Brotherhood. This is why it all looks confused. Why do I say that they look confused? Because on the one hand, you have Western values that say, well, hang on a second. We have freedom of religion, but we also have freedom from religion. We also have free speech, which means that we can criticize, attack, and mock your religion. We did that for hundreds of years with Christianity, and look at the civilization that we built upon that. The greatest civilization humanity has ever come up with. Western civilization. By far, nobody comes even close. We did that, but suddenly Muslim migrants come in to every single Western country, and now all of a sudden, Britain effectively has blasphemy laws. People have been arrested, put in prison, fined for saying derogatory things about Islam that are offensive to Muslims. Whoa, what happened? This is Britain. They gave us Speaker's Corner, where you could speak up against the king and your prime minister and your government. One of the first countries to ever allow that. But now if you say that the founder of Islam was a PDF file, whoa, you could effectively go to prison. And if you get stabbed, as it happened in London, then you can be given a slap on the wrist. Oh, sorry, he just acted in a fit of rage and he was provoked. Instead of putting him in prison for many years, they said, well, he acted in rage, he was provoked. And the guy who burnt the Quran, he was fined. So this looks confusing. So I saw this post and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. A German court bars a Muslim woman from serving as judge or prosecutor in Hesse. The Darmstadt Administrative Court dismissed her lawsuit after she was denied a judicial position for intending to wear a hijab during court proceedings. I was like, oh, this is very good. Finally, a German court or the German establishment is growing a spine. The court ruled that the state's duty to maintain neutrality in the courtroom outweighs her religious beliefs. Traditional Western value, the rule of law. We have to be neutral and we have to appear neutral as well. We cannot be a party. When you put this garment on your head, how can I trust that if there is a Muslim and there is a Christian, you're going to be impartial? So we have to look neutral as well. So I was like, oh, well done. But don't celebrate too soon, okay? So this was good. But then a day later, this news comes out. Germany, an Afghan man, yes, he's another Afghan. It's falling apart everywhere. We'll talk more about this. An Afghan man who stabbed 27-year-old nursery school teacher is given more lenient sentence because he stopped stabbing the victim after 6 knife blows. You know what? Thank you very much, Mr. Afghan migrant. You stopped after 6 because technically you could have kept going. 8, 10, 12, 15, 20, 25. So we have to put this into consideration as well. Despite stabbing his victim 4 times in the back and twice in the thigh, the fact that the Afghan stopped stabbing her once she screamed was enough to convince the court in Stuttgart to drop the attempted murder charge. Now, this is a mere technicality. Now, let me actually put a face to the story and show you why he actually stopped stabbing his victim. Are you ready? This is that guy. Look at him. Look at him. So Germany is reeling after a court effectively spared an Afghan migrant a true prison sentence for killing a toddler and a father and nearly slaughtering their teacher. This is Germany's Axel Ruda Cubana. I thought British courts were drowning in suicidal empathy, but what's happening with German courts? He killed a toddler and a father and nearly slaughtering their children. Guess worse, the idea that a man who butchered children in broad daylight can be treated with mitigation has sparked fury across the country and raised a blunt question no one in power wants to answer. How much more violence ordinary Germans are expected to tolerate in the name of tolerance? And then they wonder why the AfD is gaining momentum. Why is the whole free world becoming far right? It's because of this BS. I can't imagine. Can you imagine being a victim of this horrible crime? You don't care. You're not interested in diversity or culture or whatever. Even if it was your own fellow German, you wouldn't tolerate it. But guess what? If he was a German, he would have been given a much stricter sentence. But because he's from a foreign culture, we've got to show some compassion. So German authorities sentenced Inamullah O, a 28-year-old Afghan migrant, for a brutal January 2025 knife attack on a kindergarten. By the way, I didn't even hear about it, and I keep an eye on this, okay? They kept it under wraps. On a kindergarten group in a park in Ostfriesland, Bavaria. I've been to Bavaria, beautiful. What is he doing over there? Shouldn't even be there. He randomly stabbed several children and adults, killing a 2-year-old boy and a father who tried to intervene, and seriously injuring the 27-year-old teacher who shielded the kids. Witnesses said he stopped after stabbing the teacher 6 times, which the court later treated as a mitigating factor. So that's the reason. So let's have a look. Why? Prosecutors argued he paused only because bystanders were approaching, not because he suddenly found humanity and he was like, oh, stabbing people is wrong. I might kill this person. Now look at this. When Trump said that they have emptied their mental asylums, he was right. And everyone said that, oh, look at him. This is so racist. These are hardworking people. Psychiatric evaluations diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, mental patient. He had stopped taking his medication weeks before and claimed he mistook the children for demons. There was no prior link to the victim. He was arrested nearby minutes later and charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. The court ultimately ruled him guilty but mentally ill. Isn't that amazing? When judges adjudicate these people mentally ill, it's not a controversy. The left says, yeah, that's a good judgment. We need to treat these people with compassion. But when a politician like Trump says it, or Nigel Farage says it, suddenly it becomes racist. Ordering indefinite confinement in a secure psychiatric facility instead of a standard life sentence. The outcome is lenient, as he could be released if doctors later judge him no longer dangerous. He's going to say, oh, look, you know what? I am no longer seeing demons. I'm fit to go. And guess what? He wouldn't even be deported. This is the reason why the fabric of the entire Western civilization is falling apart. And Trump is only one politician in the free world, albeit the most important country in the free world, trying to fix it. I get it. I get it. Our laws are designed in a way that you have to be more severe to someone who stabs you 10 times as opposed to someone who stabbed you 5 times. I get it. But I think this is a needless breakdown of justice. You don't need to go that into detail. We need harsher, stricter sentences. This reminds me of another court ruling. That one was from Sweden. Look at this. 61 million, and I can assure you people were not happy. A Swedish court has ruled that the Eritrean migrant who raped 16-year-old Mia Eberg won't be deported because the rape did not last long enough. The rape took place on September 1st last year when Mia missed her bus and was walking through a pedestrian tunnel after finishing her shift at McDonald's. Mia and her family immediately reported it to the police. The 18-year-old Eritrean migrant named Yazid Mohammed was sentenced to 3 years in prison for rape. Okay? Now, he wouldn't be deported because it didn't last long enough. Now, this is woke judgment, okay? The reason why he went into this needless detail that it didn't last long enough, I think he doubled down on it. I think he came back with some technical explanation when this news story went global. The Swedish judge, let me show you. The decision not to deport Yazid Mohammed has sparked global outrage. The Court of Appeal Judge Lars Victorsson now tells Samhal blah, 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 about why the 19-year-old Eritrean shouldn't be deported. See, they're making a case for that Eritrean who shouldn't even be there in the first place. It was a short-lived incident, a detail Maya would hardly care about. He remains unfazed by the storm of criticism. I don't think about it at all. We judge, we have our task, we judge, and we cannot take into account what different people think or whether they get upset. We can't follow the winds blowing in society. Whether we hear one thing or another, we go in and evaluate based on the legislation and the precedent that exists and judge accordingly. You know what? I genuinely believe that these judges have a woke mindset. They live in their ivory towers. I doubt if that had happened to his daughter, he would have looked into it like that. But to be fair to these judges, these categories do exist in our judicial system because these laws were shaped and created over many generations as Western societies evolved. For example, 100 years ago, a rape would have been just a rape. It doesn't matter how long it lasted, okay? But as our societies got complex and more complicated, they probably needed these breakdowns. Okay, someone who was violent and a rapist, someone who was physically violent and also committed rape, that is a more severe charge than something like, for example, a date rape where there was no physical violence involved other than the sexual violence. I understand why that had to happen in a homogenous society, but you think an Eritrean or an Afghan or a Pakistani who comes from a society where these things don't exist. He's going to care about that? No, he's not going to care about that. So why would you give them this luxury? Westerners think long and hard about going to jail, even though it is only for 3 months, okay? Because your lives are so good that you actually don't want to go there. You don't want to go to prison. But an Afghan or a Syrian or someone who's come from a war-torn country, they're built differently. They look at the world differently. If you're a homeless person, you might think that going to prison is better in winter than sleeping rough on the streets. So he's more desperate. It's the same with people who come from foreign cultures. That's why cultures matter, values matter. So Western laws were made for people who grew within their system over many generations, and that shaped their ethics and morality. So those laws worked on them. But suddenly you bring in someone from a foreign country, they're like, ooh, if I rape someone in Afghanistan, I'll be stoned to death. But if I rape someone in Germany, I'm going to get 3 months jail or probably a good behavior bond because I can claim that, hey, look, I didn't understand the culture. It's a no-brainer. So judges are not going to do anything. Judges are not going to deliver you justice. This is exactly why we are seeing these bad judgments over and over again in every single Western country. And I don't think we can purely blame the judges because they are interpreting the laws that were given to them. I do think there is an element of suicidal empathy and compassion. I do think there's an element of that. But if we make strict laws, like really firm laws, I don't care if it lasted 3 seconds or 30 minutes. I don't care. Going to put you in prison for a long time, and then as soon as you come out, we're going to ship you back to your third world country. Even if you are a citizen of Germany or France or Britain or whatever, we're going to send you back. We need new laws because these laws were made before the advent of multiculturalism. I received a very interesting message from an American subscriber the other day, and he asked me, Harris, surely there are good Muslims. And I'm like, yes, most Muslims are good people. Most Muslims are good people. They are just like anyone else. But that's the wrong question to be asking, because in the age of multiculturalism, you have to understand this point that no matter who you are, even as a Westerner, people are inherently tribal. They feel a sense of loyalty to their own culture. So when push comes to shove, people are asked to pick a side. If you're a Muslim, of course you're going to be on the Muslim side. It doesn't matter whether you hold the American or British passport. Doesn't matter. A Muslim is going to be loyal to a Muslim. Yes, of course, in peacetime, they're not going to do anything. But when it comes to choosing between the West and your own community, 99% of the people are going to pick their own community. So that's the crux of it. So all these Muslims that you see who are provoking you, antagonizing you, blocking streets, overall, they're good people. They're not going out murdering and stabbing and raping people. They're not. Yeah, some are doing little dodgy things here and there. They are dodging the welfare system and whatever. You have those people everywhere. You have people who dodge your tax department. You have those kind of people everywhere. But that's not an intercivilizational matter. But when it comes to choosing between your community and a foreign community, even though they are born and raised in that community, they still see it as a foreign community, because as a Muslim, these are Western laws, these are Western values, they're not Muslim values, which is the reason why. Let me play you this video. Young British Muslims are listening to him. Listen to him.
Don't say I'm British first. You're not British. You're Muslim first. That's your identity. Does that make sense? So many people, they say, oh, where are you from? Or brother, what are you? No, me, I'm British. Me, I'm Canadian. Subhanallah. As if Canadian is going to help you when you go in your grave. Or I am American. Or I'm Somali. Or I am Afghani. No, you are Muslim. That's who you are.
So this is basically the Muslim Brotherhood in a nutshell. But there's another video. So these are radical Muslims, okay? It's not just them who see their host countries as foreign entities or as their enemy. It's not just them. Let me show you something else. Look at these people.
That's what we're rolling out today.
We got London next.
I've got a bad leg today out of all days, unfortunately. But yeah, you man, we're rolling.
They're not loyal to Britain. It's Islam versus Britain. They could be there for another 10 generations. They are not loyal to Britain. And there will come a point when they would ask for their own country. There's going to be a civil war. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. As I said, it's not just the Muslims. It's not just one segment, these radical, mindless, religious fanatics. It's not just them. I saw a very interesting video. Yeah, here. So look at this guy. Yeah. Now, he's not Muslim. He's a British Indian. He is asking for reparations. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into this debate whether people who were colonized and people who were enslaved deserve reparations some 200 years later in the case of slavery and nearly 100 years later in case of colonialism. I'm not going into that debate, but I'm just looking at it purely objectively. Why is it that the lady on the left, who is a white British woman, she's defending the United Kingdom, and the guy on the right, who happens to have Indian heritage, born and raised in England, is not defending Britain? He feels that he needs to be more loyal to the culture of his parents or his grandparents than the culture of the country he's born in. Even if he's right, even if you buy that part of the argument that, yes, people who were enslaved 10 generations later that deserve some sort of reparations, even if you believe in that, even if you believe that India was wrongfully colonized and we need some sort of reparations for it, even if you believe in that, then you, as someone who was born and raised in England, should not be making that argument. His parents should be making that argument if they're born in India. Even they shouldn't be making that argument because they moved to Britain and they became British citizens. This guy would rather see the United Kingdom go bankrupt than change his allegiance. These people are not loyal to the country that they're born and raised in. They shouldn't be making that argument. Have a listen to this. This is annoying.
It's not just that it was enslavement. It was also the colonialism that occurred well into the 20th century.
Why is colonialism bad?
You
No,
don't think
genuine.
colonialism is bad?
No,
Okay,
I'm
I'll give
asking you to answer
Okay.
the question.
I'll answer the question if you'll give me a moment. When Britain, for example, began its colonization of India in the 1700s, just an example, 27% of the world's GDP. India had 27% of the world's GDP. By the time India left, Britain left 200 years later, after millions had been starved by colonial-driven famines like in West Bengal and in Madras and other places, and theft. In 1947, India had 3% of global GDP. 90% of people were living below the poverty line, a literacy rate of 17%, and a life expectancy
Because before
of 27.
colonialism, everything was great.
That's not what I'm arguing.
No,
what
but
I'm
it is what
arguing
you're
it was
arguing.
theft. No, but
You're
you're
saying
defending
colonialism made it worse. I mean, other countries are getting richer, so obviously they would have a smaller percentage of
colonialism is good.
I can rebut most of his points, but that's not the point I'm making. I am making the point that if you are a citizen of the United Kingdom, it's the United Kingdom that deserves your undivided loyalty, not the culture of your parents. It's the United Kingdom that deserves your undivided loyalty. And as I said, there's one Muslim end, the one that I showed you before. They just openly say, we are Muslim first. But even these non-religious nut jobs, even they feel that, oh, you know what? I don't owe any loyalty to the United Kingdom because they colonized us. No country can work like this. No country is perfect, by the way. Should Britain ask for reparations from the Italians because Britain was under Roman occupation 2,000 years ago? Where does it stop? It doesn't stop. It was a different world back then. Sorry, I come from the Indian subcontinent, okay? I understand that. I understand we were colonized by the United Kingdom. But sorry, bad luck. We should have had a better military. You cannot expect to be a great civilization without a strong standing army. America is the superpower of the world, not just because it's a huge economy, which is a big part of it, and it also exports its culture to the outside world, but it is also the biggest and most powerful military in the world. And I hope it remains like that. And you don't have to apologize for it. Sorry. And China understands that. If China wants to have its own world order imposed on the rest of us, then it has to defeat us on the battlefield first. So civilizational rights are earned on the battlefield. They're not handed to you on a silver platter. So I think the West is confused. I think the West needs to stand up and say, you know what? enough is enough. We're not going to apologize for who we are. We're not going to apologize for our history. Yes, we learned, we grew, we did something that everyone else used to do it. But the West is the only civilization that actually changed the trend. Up until the British Empire, every empire was gobbling up everyone else. And then the US came into the equation, and the US forced Britain and France during World War II to end colonialism. Now, this was the evolution of Western civilization. So they evolved. Everyone had slavery. The West ended slavery. Everyone used to be brutal towards its enemies. The West came up with the UN and the Geneva Convention. The world that we live in is much better because of Western civilization. Yes, it outgrew itself. It practiced barbarity, which every other human civilization did, but it ended it. So no need to apologize for it. I am very hawkish on this topic. You know what? If you don't like it, fuck it. Get out. Get out. The longer we delay this, the harsher the blowback is going to be. You don't need to apologize. You want to live here? Give us your undivided loyalty. This woke literature, these PhDs in humanities and coloring your hair blue, none of that crap is going to fly anymore. We're not interested in that anymore. Anyway, rant's over.